Hello, let's start analyzing the solar eclipse that will occur soon on September 21st, 2025. The shadow of this eclipse will be visible in the Antarctic region near New Zealand and the islands adjacent to New Zealand. In fact, this is not so important. A solar eclipse affects not only the place where its shadow falls. By the way, this will be a partial solar eclipse, not a total one. So let's take a closer look at the eclipse map itself and the projections of the planets on Earth that form at this moment. The eclipse will occur in the 30th degree of Virgo and has the following distinctive features. Firstly, it's the position of the eclipse point in relation to the conjunction of Neptune and Saturn. Moreover, the position with Saturn is already separating, while with Neptune it is approaching. This already implies an increased likelihood of natural disasters, as well as the risk of disruptions in relationships between people. This especially concerns future joint projections of the luminaries of Neptune and Saturn. The dispositor, which is the ruler of the eclipse, in this case the ruler of Virgo Mercury, is in a fairly comfortable position without any obvious tense aspects. Moreover, it has mutual reception with the planet Venus, which is also in the sign ruled by Mercury. This gives us some indication, a hint of the likelihood of improving the global situation over the next 6 months, as Venus and Mercury are associated with negotiations, discussions of some peaceful solutions to get out of the situation. But there is, of course, a clear sore point in this eclipse. I believe it is primarily Mars and Pluto. They are in a 90-degree aspect with each other, a tense conflict aspect, and everything would be fine. But this same aspect, specifically the Mars-Pluto square, was expressed in the horoscope of the Air era, December 21st, 2020, and in the horoscope of the start of Russia's military operation in 2022. Year. The particular malice of Mars's projection will also be indicated by this midpoint. Mars has fallen into the midpoint between Saturn and Uranus. Health recommendations. Since the luminaries have landed exactly on the border of the signs of Virgo and Libra, but overall more during the lunar month, the load will fall on the energies of the sign of Libra. Therefore, attention should be paid to the likelihood of exacerbation of chronic diseases related to the intestinal system as well as the renal system. Some of the best recipes this month are conducting diets, moderate fasting, controlling the amount of fluids you drink throughout the day. On an astropsychological level, the recipe is to seek compromises, to find opportunities to negotiate with other people, to settle matters diplomatically, intellectually. This solar eclipse contains indications of quite large-scale natural disasters. This is primarily the likelihood of earthquakes, fires, storms, floods, environmental pollution. This is related to the opposition of the Sun to Neptune, especially in places of projection of the luminaries, Saturn and Neptune. But in places of projection of Mars, Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus, the likelihood of criminal activity and military actions, terrorist acts, will increase. I noted only 3 peaks of increased likelihood of emergencies. These are September 20th to 22nd, October 5th to 7th, and October 20th to 21st. Before moving on to forecasts by continents, in this case I suggest taking a look at the entire world map. I noticed that the capitals of the countries of the main players on the world political stage in this new moon are affected by various projections. Let's quickly look at this. Beijing, Venus, Moscow, Venus, London, Uranus, Brussels, Uranus, and Pluto, Washington, Jupiter, Israel, despite its size, plays an important role, Venus. This broad overview allows us to say that over the next 6 months, events will unfold favorably for the USA, for China, for Russia, and for part of Ukraine. But unfavorable for the countries of the European Union and the United Kingdom. The exceptions in the European Union are Ireland, Portugal, and Spain. For these countries, Jupiter may create more favorable conditions. Let's move on to the maps. Europe. The joint projection of the luminaries Saturn and Neptune. I will mention this particular combination of planets several times during this eclipse. It passes exactly through Yekaterinburg, the border of Russia and Kazakhstan, near Orsk. touches Turkmenistan in Central Asia, as well as the exit from the Persian Gulf to the Ottoman Gulf, partially Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. The 10th projection of Pluto passes exactly through the capital of the European Union, Brussels, through Amsterdam, and touches Paris. Paris is also affected by the projection of Uranus, which also touches London and Paris. This aligns well with what is already happening in these countries on the eve of this solar eclipse, namely mass popular protests against the authorities in these countries over the next 6 months. These sentiments are likely to intensify. Scotland might be somehow involved as Uranus passes through Edinburgh. Jupiter will provide an exception in this region. Its favorable projection passes exactly through Dublin. Trips and vacations to Ireland in the next 6 months are favorable. Also, the projection of Jupiter will share some of its favorable influence with the border areas of Portugal and Spain, not far from the capitals of Portugal and Lisbon. Mars will also pass through, which may indicate some fires, accidents, or an increase in criminal activity. The Canary Islands are in a neutral position this month, which is already good. Now, perhaps about the most favorable projections that fall on Europe this month, which is the projection of Jupiter. It passes through the Finnish-Russian border. It passes through major cities such as Kazan, Samara, and Orenburg. This is the projection of Jupiter. In these cities, in these areas, the solar eclipse will create favorable conditions for business development and improving relationships between people. And finally, the projection of Venus. It passes near Moscow and strongly affects eastern Ukraine, part of Crimea, part of the so-called new Russian lands, Novorossiya. I believe that this Venus will create all the prerequisites for a legal agreement concerning these territories to be concluded in the future. This partially echoes my forecast for Russia, which was released a couple of weeks ago. There, I pointed out that from April to June 2026, the best efforts for peace related to this topic will be made. And this solar eclipse will create the necessary prerequisites for this. It can also be added that the projection of Uranus significantly affects Switzerland, the mountainous regions of Italy, the Alpine regions, Sardinia, Sicily, and even the capital of Italy, Rome. Perhaps some protest sentiments somewhat similar to those occurring in the United Kingdom and France may flare up in Italy as well. The map of Asia. I'll start with the joint projections of Saturn, Neptune, the Sun, and the Moon, which affect Magadan, part of the Kuril Islands, practically guaranteeing the theme of earthquakes and volcanoes in the area of Sakhalin, in the area of the Kuril Islands. For this zone, I would note the end of September 2025, mid-December 2025, and March 2026. These dates may indicate large-scale earthquakes in this area. The projection of Uranus affects part of the Far East. Over Taiwan, both the projection of Uranus and the projection of Venus pass simultaneously. In some, by the way, this combination may indicate an unexpectedly positive resolution of problems related to these countries with this territory. Moreover, the projection of Venus passes exactly through Beijing, indicating Beijing's desire to resolve this issue peacefully. The projection of Venus passes near Lake Baikal, creating the best conditions for relaxation in this part of Siberia, a unified Russian territory. The intense projection of Mars runs directly through Norilsk, passing near Tomsk, increasing the likelihood of criminal activity, fires, and traffic accidents, industrial accidents. It's worth noting that the projection of Mars passes near the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu, near the capital of Tibet, Lhasa, and near the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka. The projection of Pluto will only increase the tension in this part of Asia. Virtually the entire area between India and China is under stress. Here, the likelihood of border conflicts increases, conflicts related to crime. Not long ago, the Z revolution took place in Nepal, and there's a video about it on the channel. The passage of Pluto and Mars near the capital Kathmandu may indicate that the situation in this country will not calm down, and in the next 6 months there may be another change of power or some large-scale protests. The projection of Jupiter crosses India in the best way, creating conditions for relaxation in Sri Lanka and the southern part of the Indian subcontinent. The favorable influence of Venus on the Philippines can also be noted. Africa. For Africa, I would first note the intense projection of Uranus, which passes through Libya, Sudan, Chad, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The projection of Pluto runs directly through the capital of Algeria, Algiers, through the capital of Nigeria, Lagos, and affects a significant territory of Niger. The West African zone, especially in October 2025, is under strong tension due to the intersections of Mars and Pluto, which are in a tense square aspect in the horoscope. Therefore, all these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and so on, may be involved in some conflicts one way or another. The projection of Jupiter will significantly improve the situation in Morocco, despite the fact that the projection of Mars also passes through this country. The projection of Venus improves the situation near the Suez Canal, in the Red Sea, on the coast of Egypt, and the Red Sea. Venus will also help to settle the situation in Ethiopia and Kenya. North America. Despite the abundance of tense projections, we see that a strong favorable projection of Jupiter passes through Washington, which means that overall the next 6 months are favorable for the USA. This may also affect the economic situation in this country. The greatest tension is expected on the west coast of the United States, where the projections of the luminaries Saturn and Neptune, plus the projection of Uranus, create tension from Los Angeles to Canadian Vancouver. All these cities, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, are under noticeable tension, with possible seismic activity, outbreaks of some diseases, and some economic problems in this area of North America. The projection of Venus passes through Alaska, creating favorable living conditions in the eastern part of Alaska. The vertical projection of Mars runs directly through the Gulf of Mexico, affecting Guatemala and states like Texas and Canadian Ontario. Traveling to this area of North America will require extra caution. We also see a strong tense projection of Pluto near the Panama Canal, Panama and Cuba. This month, Pluto is under strong tension from Mars, so in the next 6 months, problems of a natural or technological nature are possible in this zone. South America. I'll start with the very projection of Pluto. It affects part of Central America, Panama, but does not extend to South America itself. In South America, essentially only 2 projections are important. The projection of Uranus, one of them affects Venezuela. This resonates with the theme of pressure from the United States on this country. Uranus is not a full-scale war, but it is provocations. Uranus affects sparsely populated areas of Brazil, Paraguay, and noticeably affects the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires. In general, uranium and the topic of Argentina almost always lead to some protests. The Venus projection will create the best conditions for tourism in the areas of Suriname and French Guiana, which cannot be said about Guyana, whose capital Georgetown is affected by uranium. Australia. This solar eclipse, of course, highlights this region of the world very noticeably. Firstly, as we know, the solar eclipse casts its shadow precisely near the Antarctic zone, affecting New Zealand. And we see that New Zealand is affected by Jupiter and Mars here. Overall, for New Zealand, the solar eclipse can become a turning point, shifting the direction of the country's development in a favorable direction. The only thing to note is that the projection of Mars may increase the likelihood of industrial accidents, storms, shark activity, fires in this area, as well as the awakening of volcanoes if they are present here. The projection, the joint projection of Saturn, the Sun, the Moon, and Neptune strongly affects the islands near Papua New Guinea. It almost completely covers the east of Australia, including the capital of this country. All major cities, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Brisbane, Townsville, are all under great tension. It is obvious that the next half year for Australia is unfavorable, tense, with an increased likelihood of protests, government changes, and some natural disasters related to this country. Yes, the projection of Venus, which comes from the Philippines, crosses Australia, but these are the central zones of this continent, sparsely populated. To some extent, the projection of Venus will improve the situation in the city of Darwin. But the far west of Australia is again under strong tension from Uranus, Kalgoorlie, Esperance, Perth. This entire area, more or less populated Australian, is under significant tension, but it already has such a tint. Uranus means strong winds, storms, possibly dissatisfaction with the government of this country. There may also be an increase in criminal activity in this area of Australia. This concludes the overview of the solar eclipse. I will also draw attention to the fact that in the horoscope of this solar eclipse, a large group of planets is immediately within 3 degrees of the boundary of the signs. These are Uranus, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, the Sun, the Moon, Mars, and Venus. Practically all the planets except Mercury, which hasn't gone far either. It has just entered the 6th degree of Libra, but all the planets are concentrated, grouped at the boundaries of the zodiac signs. This may indicate that within the influence of this solar eclipse, the topic of borders will rise, the topics of treaties concerning borders, the topic of treaties concerning the inviolability of borders between countries in the future. Well, now I wish you all the best. Have a great fall. Goodbye.